All right, AP Calculus, today's date is January 14th, 2020. We're on self-check 7.3 here, the solutions. This one, you do need a calculator even though it has a graph, weirdly, because of part D. Part D is the one that you really need your calculator on. Everything else, I mean, it's nice and handy. So we're talking about Karen, she's riding her bicycle. Here's the graph of her velocity. We're looking for her acceleration at time 7.5. So acceleration, we can say that A of 7.5 is equal to the derivative of velocity. So it's equal to v prime, or dv dt, v prime of 7.5. All right, so if I'm looking at the derivative of velocity, what am I really looking at? It's the slope, right? So where's the slope? 7.5, we're talking about that point right here. So the slope there is clearly what? It looks like -1, but you would be wrong if you put -1 because our units for our y-axis are every 0.1, and our units for the t-axis are every 1. So technically it's going down. I'm going to think of this as my slope, right? Delta y over delta x if you want to use that. Or you can use the other equation. There's a bunch of ways of thinking about this, but in general you're going down, so 0.1 down, and you're going right 1, which is just -0.1. And it does say here, indicate units. So if you don't do units, you will be losing a point. So it's -0.1. Our units here, what are we doing here? Minutes and, where does it say that? Miles, yeah, miles per minute. It even tells us right there. So this is going to be miles per minute. It is indeed acceleration, yeah, so it does need to be minutes squared. Thank you. So there's our final answer. Let's go ahead and box it. And how do we score ourselves? So you get 1 point if you got the answer, just -0.1, purely the number answer, so +1 there. And if you got the units correct, miles per minute squared, you get +1. So that one was out of 2 points for A. On to B, unless there are questions. Doesn't seem like it there are. On to B. We're taking the absolute value. Oh yeah, what is the definition of that? And I can type because that's a little bit neater. I'm gonna choose red. No, let's choose blue because red is for like when I'm scoring things. So we say that that thing is the total distance, and I can't spell. What are our units? In miles again. Miles. Between 0 and 12 minutes. Cool, done. Let's make sure that I guess I could go ahead and copy paste the thing, or I could rewrite it. I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to rewrite this as 0 to 12 of absolute value of Vt and absolute value dt. That is the total distance. How to score yourself? If you said,
You also need to find the value of it.
we also need to find the value. I guess reading is key. If I find the value, I just have to find all of this area. All right, lots of geometry coming up here. So this triangle has a base of 2, height of 0.2, that's 0.4, and then half of that is 0.2. So that is 0.2. That is also 0.2, technically -0.2, but I'm taking the absolute value, so again, 0.2. I'm looking at this triangle right here. That's 1 by 0.3, which is 0.3, but then half of that is 0.15. This rectangle right here is just 1 by 0.3, not a triangle, so just 0.3. This triangle up here is 1 by 0.1, which is 0.1, but half of that is 0.05 for that triangle. And then this giant rectangle right here is 1, 2, 3, 4 by 0.2, which is 0.8. No need to do half of that because it's a rectangle. And then a triangle, it's 1 by 0.2, which is 0.2, but then half of that is 0.1. And we got to add all those guys up because let me make sure I have the correct interval. Between 0 and 12, yeah, 12 is the ending. So 0.2, okay, I always check that because I've made that mistake twice now in my life, and I never want to make that mistake again. Sometimes it'll be like randomly 0 to 9. You have to cut it off at a weird point. Do check the bounds of your integral. You'll see that on the pretest or the test. That's why I messed up. All right, so 0.2 plus 0.2. So I have 0.4 and then 0.55, 0.85, 0.855, 1.655, 1.755. Is that right? I feel like I've made a mistake somewhere.
I got 1.8.
I should have gotten 1.8.
Did you?
Ah, I forgot that 5 right there. Okay, yeah, it's 1.8. Sorry. So if I add all those together, I get 1.8. So I'll write this, I don't know. Let's move you up so I have more room. So we can say that I can just copy and paste this guy again. This thing is equal to 1.8. And we should probably have units here. It doesn't say so, but 1.8 miles. How to score yourself. If you said the meaning of the integral, mainly that you have the total distance, and make sure you have all the you don't actually get points for the unit, so just say total distance, you get +1. And if you've got 1.8 +1. Units on this one, they don't give you points, but just a good idea to always put units. So again, part B was out of 2 points. Score yourself, write down a number, and we are on to part C. Okay, she returns home and gets her homework. At what time should she go back home? So switching direction is really the question right here, right? Where do you switch direction? Switching direction in terms of velocity is wherever you cross through the t-axis, and it looks like it's crossing through at times equal to 2. So I come down here and I'll type my answer because it's a little bit faster. I'll say turns around at t is equal to 2. And you need to have a reason for your answer. So we can say because, or BC, her velocity changes signs. Specifically, you don't need to say this, from positive, can't spell, to negative. And yeah, that's all you have to say.
You said before she was moving to the right, and then she moved to the left.
That's not enough, no, because you have no information from this problem that says right or left. You have to use the information that's given to you. All that's given to you in terms of this problem is the velocity. Yeah, so in this case, you have to get 1 point for times equal to 2, and 1 point for something that's talking about velocity sign change. So +1 there. And that's good that we're making those mistakes now, because now we won't make those mistakes on the pretest nor the test, right? So try to make as many mistakes as possible and learn from them. Part D, this is the one where you're definitely going to need a calculator. I guess I should open up Wabbit EMU, although I think, should I go ahead and give my other calculator a chance? We'll give you a chance, calculator. If it will even open. Am I going to have to abandon it again? Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm abandoning it. I thought it was set up. Maybe when I restart my computer, things happen. Anyway, let's talk about D. So Larry is racing or something. He's going against her. His velocity is modeled by an actual function. Who lives closer to the school? So we need to find total distance that Larry's traveling and compare it to the total distance of, what's her name, Karen. And whoever has the lower total distance is the answer. So let me really quickly here, because you guys have already done this, figure out what's going on here. So we have y equals, just plugging this in, pi is going to be second power pi divided by 15 times sine of, in parentheses, it's going to be second power to get pi divided by 12 times x. I think I have that all correct. You guys can check that. Looks good, right? Let's get out of that second quit, and then I'm going to do math 9 to do the integral of var's right, enter, y1 with respect to x from 0 to, he said 12 minutes, right? He gets to school in 12 minutes, so 12 is going to be my upper bound, 0, 12. And I get, I think it should be about 1.6. Yep, 1.6 exactly. So let's go ahead and write down our integral. What did we do? We took the integral from 0 to 12 of wt dt, and we found, oh wait, do we have to take the absolute value? No, we don't, because he's just going straight home. There's nothing saying he's changing direction. He's going 1.6, and again, we don't care about the total distance. Even if he went home and went back, we don't care. We just take non-absolute value to get his total distance traveled, or his, this is not total distance, this is his total displacement. So his displacement is 1.6 miles, and we know that from Karen, Karen was 0 to 12 of v of t dt, and Karen was 1.4. How do we know it's 1.4, Mr. Sindel? Well, if I come back up here,
6, because you almost subtract 1.2 from 1.8.
say again?
It's 1.6 because your total distance is 1.8, and the only negative thing is 0.2.
But then, so you have to subtract it twice, because not only does it not include in the total, but then you have to subtract it again because it's now a negative. So pretend it wasn't there, and there's a giant empty hole, then I wouldn't include it in all of these calculations, so you subtract it. But now you also need to subtract it again because it's negative.
But it's asking who lives closer to school.
Exactly. So all I need to do is calculate all of this area positives minus negatives. I'm looking for what is my displacement. Displacement is my non-absolute value, so I literally just calculate what is all of this area added up. And so this one is now a negative. So 0.2 minus 0.2 is 0, and then all of this stuff added up is 1.4. So pretend that she hasn't left yet. So right here, she's grabbing her whatever book that she forgot. So essentially, if I just do this area right here, that's the area of her displacement, and that area is 1.4. Yeah, sorry, there's two different ways to look at that one. I forgot to say that part C was out at 2 points. And part D, how do you score that? Well, I guess we have to make our conclusion, right? So we come down here and we say that Karen lives closer to school. And you don't need to say anything like 1.4 is less than 1.6. That's very clear from your work on the side. So let's go ahead and score ourselves now. So if you actually have the conclusion that Karen lives closer to school, you only get that. In the scoring guide, it doesn't actually say you need to have the correct reasoning. If you just guessed, according to the scoring guide, that Karen lives closer to school, you get the point just for guessing. You don't have to show the work according to the scoring guide. And then you need some sort of integral for Larry. You do need to have an integral. If you don't show an integral that you're doing that, you don't get a point. And you also need the 1.6. So 1 point integral, 1.1.6, 1 point conclusion. Out of 3 points. This should add up to 9. 3 plus 2 is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes. Out of 9 points. How many did you get? Hold up fingers. You have at least 9 fingers, so you can do it all. 5, 6, 0, and then Gio was doing other stuff. All right, so that was self-check 7.3. What did we learn? Arrow, what did you learn?
The last one, I was distance.
Displacement versus distance. Yeah, that's a hard one. Good lesson. All right. Anything else that you learned?
There would, or I have to look at the units more closely, because I thought that Karen lived 18 miles from school.
Instead of 1.8. Okay, good. Anything else? Good?
Probably, but those were the bigger things.
Okay, cool. What'd you learn, Claire?
That I have to subtract 1 twice.
Okay, yeah. I've made the mistake many times, so I'm not being critical. I'm glad that you learned that, though. Sego, what'd you learn? Everything. What are the things that you're going to do differently on the self-check that we're about to do in 7.4? Let's do this. Pop quiz. What is the definition of total distance? It's the integral of absolute value of velocity. What is the definition of acceleration in the terms of velocity? It's slope or the derivative. Yeah, both of those answers are perfect. What about where do you switch direction? Where do you change direction? Not quite. It's where V sign change. Yeah, whenever you have a V sign change. Yeah, those are kind of the bigger things. All right, we're going to do 7.4. Normally you have 15 minutes, but again, only 10 minutes because we have a limited class period. All right, so 7.4, we're trying to find where the particle is moving to the left. Let me program this on my calculator really quickly. So, oh wait, there's no calculator on this question. So how do I do this with no calculator? If we're all thinking, oops, that's not a good thing.
No wonder they're so quick.
Yeah, I'm just making sure. Yeah, this should have been a no calculator question, and that should have been me pointing it out. I did put it on here, but I forgot to say it out loud. So I need to figure out where my time is equal to, or where my velocity is equal to 0, and how do I figure that out without a calculator? So this is the general idea. So I basically need to say, so cosine of pi over 6t. I need to set that. Oh no. Okay, whatever. I need to set that equal to, come on now, set that equal to 0. Well, how do I do that? If I take the arc cosine of both sides, so if I do that, it cancels out the cosine, I'm left with pi over 6t is equal to, what is the arc cosine of 0? And that's something that you should be able to do, or at least where is a value of cosine that gives you 0? So cosine is 0 where? Cosine is the x or the y coordinate? X coordinate. So the cosine is 0 there and there. What are those values? Well, that value up there is pi over 2. Or you'll have pi over 6 is equal to this bottom one, which is 3 pi over 2. Okay, that's kind of a hard step, though. I want to make sure that everyone could follow that. Does everyone see why pi over 6t is equal to pi over 2? It's 0 there, 0 there. Okay, so from there, I'm going to divide both sides by pi. I love canceling out pies. Pies, pies. You ate the pies. I love eating pies. And then from there, I have 1/6t is equal to 1/2. So I multiply both sides by 6. Multiply the left-hand side by 6, right-hand side by 6. And I get t by itself is equal to 3. So that's one of the values where it crosses. And then the other value, again, I love canceling out those pies, gone and gone. And then multiply both sides by 6 again, multiply by 6, multiply by 6. And I get, wait, where'd my t go? There's my t. I get t by itself is equal to 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. So my t values are at 3 and 9. So then I need to go ahead and do this. And we haven't seen this for a while, but you go ahead and make a line. And I'm going to plug in those critical values. These are the velocity is really f prime. So what are my values where it crosses 0? The critical values are at 3 and 9. And then I need to do a test point in between these values. So I'm going to choose the easiest possible value, and I know that it's going to switch because it's a cosine function. It always goes up and down. It's not going to touch and then come back down, right? It's a cosine value. So I'm going to choose 0. If I do cosine of 0 is, oh dear God. Cosine of 0 is 1. Because cosine of 0, the angle is 0, therefore it's talking about this point. What is the x-coordinate of this point on the unit circle? 1. So cosine of 0 is positive, and then it goes to negative, and then it goes to positive. Okay, so from there, we know that it's going left wherever I have negative velocity. And that's just a definition that you need to have down. So if you don't have that down, please write it down now. Moving to the left means velocity is less than 0. So the velocity is less than 0 in between 3 and 9. So our answer is down here. It's between 3, 9. And box it.
That's the answer I got, but should we get points since we used the calculator?
No, unless you think you could do this whole process on your own. If you think you could have gotten on your own, you can give yourself fake points. It doesn't really matter. These points don't go in the grade book anyway. All right, so now for part B. Write but do not evaluate. I love these questions because you have to. They're so easy as long as you know the definition. Total distance. What is the definition of total distance? Shout it out. Absolute value of integral, yeah. So you can say it's the integral. I have velocity of t. Right now, what do I have right now? This is not total distance. It's change in position. This is the total change in position. Now it's the total distance. And I need to go between 0 and 6, and done. And I guess I can move this down so it's a little bit neater, but there it is. Done. I forgot to tell you how to score part 1, but it's 1 point if you can get 1 point if you just set it equal to 0. It says you don't have to find 3 and 9. If you just say it's equal to 0, give yourself a point. And if you actually find the interval from 3 to 9, give yourself a point. For part B, so that was out of 2. For part B, you need to just write exactly what I wrote there. If you don't write exactly that, you don't get your point. I think you need your dt in there as well. Part C, however, find the acceleration of the particle at time t. At t equals to 4. So I'm going to say acceleration a of 4 is equal to the derivative of velocity, right? So it's v prime of 4. Okay, so we need to find what acceleration even is. So acceleration, take the derivative of velocity. So here's our velocity, take the derivative of that function. So derivative, what house are we in? Cosine house or trig house, right? Exactly. So the derivative of cosine is it positive or negative sign? Negative sign. C stands for change, not anti-change. There's no antiderivative. So just change the sign, so it's negative now. Negative, I'm going to leave some space, hint, hint. Sine, and leave the inner. I can't touch the inner yet. Pi over 6t. Pi over 6t. And then that was doubter. I need to now multiply by dinner. What is the derivative of the inner?
6, or pi over 6.
Pi over 6. So I'm going to write this as pi over 6, negative pi over 6 times sine of pi over 6t. That is the derivative, so that's our acceleration. And then we're going to plug in 4. So I guess I kind of want to color code this to make it pop. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, now I can come back here and say, oh, I can plug in 4 here, and that's going to be negative pi over 6 sine of pi over 6 times 4. And I guess I can put that all in parentheses. Times 4. And what is that going to be? So pi over 6 times 4 is 2 pi over 3. So where's 2 pi over 3? Everyone point. 2 pi over 3 is... You guys got this. 2 pi over 3.
2 pi.
So 3 pi over 3 is right there. Because that's pi. Pi is directly left. So 1 pi over 3, 2 pi over 3. It's not straight up, but a little bit to the left. All right, so everyone knows where 2 pi over 3 is. And if you don't remember those, please review your notes. So I'll come write it down here. 2 pi over 3 lives right there. And it makes this 30, 60, 90 triangle. So that's 2 pi over 3. I'll label that. And then I'm looking for sine of 2 pi over 3. So let's label all the dimensions of that triangle. Let's enlarge, enhance, just like in the FBI fake shows. What are the dimensions of the legs of that triangle on a unit circle? You guys got this. What is the dimension of that? Is it half? Is it square root of 3 over 2? Is it square root of 2 over 2? What is it?
Probably it's half.
It's technically negative a half because it goes left, but yeah, you're right, it's a half. So negative a half. And this is going up, so it's going to be positive. What is this leg?
Is it 1?
Nope. This hypotenuse is 1.
Oh, I
Mm-mm. You guys just have to look at the cheat sheet.
We can't see that for you.
I see square root of 3 over 2.
You can't see. Everyone else does.
Hashtag 2020 vision. It's square root of 3 over 2. And sine is asking for the x or the y coordinate. It is the y coordinate, yeah. And the y coordinate here is square root of 3 over 2. So I come over here and say this is equal to, I still have this negative pi over 6 that I have to deal with, so I'll leave that. Negative pi over 6. And then this sine of pi over 6 times 4, all that stuff is square root of 3 over 2. So times square root of 3 over 2. All right. And then finally I do some simplification magic. Not really magic, I just squish all of this together. So I get negative pi root 3 over 12. And what do we know from that? Wait a sec. No, that's right, okay. So I got the acceleration at time t. So the acceleration is there, and the next thing I need to do is find if the speed is increasing or decreasing. I don't know why I'm blanking there.
Oh.
What is the definition of speed? More specifically, what is the definition of speed increasing? It's where... Yeah, exactly. So I'm checking the sign of A and V. Well, what is it? What is V? I have to find V of 4, and I haven't done that ever yet, right?
But it's between 3 and 9.
Oh,
It's negative.
nice. That's what it made us do in part A. So 4 lives right there, which is negative. So we can say that down here we can say V of 4 is less than 0. And check this out. This is A of 4. A of 4 is negative, so we can say A of 4 is also less than 0. And because we have both of those, that implies speed is decreasing. It's increasing, sorry. You had it. I don't know what I'm saying. Speed is increasing. At t equals 4. And you do still need to have a reason. This, I mean, you've done a lot of work here, but you need to say that they have the same sign. So you have to say because V and A have the same sign. Whew. Yeah, that was a bit of a problem, right? Way easy if you had a calculator for sure. You just plug it in and it takes maybe like a minute tops. All right, how to score yourself. C is out of 3 points, so out of 3. You get 1 point if you got this negative pi root 3 over 12, so that's plus 1. You get 1 point if you say it's increasing, and it doesn't. Okay, you have to have. Well, I think even if you guess, you get the points according to the scoring guide. So 1 point if you say it's increasing, so plus 1 there. and 1 point if you say V and A have the same sign, which is pretty crazy because according to the scoring guide, you could totally guess speed is increasing and you know the definition of speed increasing, V and A have the same sign. You could get 2 points without doing any math. According to the scoring guide, I could ask John if that's actually true, but I mean, that's what it looks like on the scoring guide. And by the way, the scoring guide that I'm looking at, let's come over to the website. It's up on the website. So if you're ever curious what's going on, oh god, it's going to take me a while to get there. Mr. Sindel. It'll be interesting looking back at this website when the website actually gets changed. Like, whoa, that's what it used to look like. Unit 7. And coming down here to the self-check scoring guide. So we're on 7.4 scoring guide. So you can see what it looks like. Go, computer, go. You can see right here that I'm looking at. For number 3, it doesn't say that you need to have a prerequisite that you find A. It just says, hey, if you get the conclusion and you get the reason correct, you get the 2 points. All right, let's do part D. Find the position. Whenever you see the word position, always think of the table. Start plus change is equal to end. So every single time you see position or end or anything like that, you're always going to do T. You're always going to do start. Always going to do plus change is equal to, that's a bad equal to the end. And then make your table. Okay, well, we know the time T. Sometimes we have to find that, but this is given to us. It's 4. What is our start? Let's go back up here. Start is, well, it starts at time 0. It starts at position -2. So our integral is going to go between 0 and something, and it's going to start at -2. So -2 there. And the integral is going to go from 0 to something. I was telling this to Gio earlier, but this lower bound might be something other than 0. It might be 1. Or 2, or -3. So be careful. It doesn't always start at 0. So it's from 0 to whatever this number was, so 4, and of VT. I'm just going to rewrite it like that, DT. Oh no, we don't have a calculator. Okay, we have to do this by hand. So we have to calculate this integral. That integral, let me just copy paste it so we know what we're working on. Maybe I should have conserved space a little bit better. Oops. So this is equal to, well, the integral of velocity. So here's our velocity, cosine of pi over 6t. Do we need to use Taxman? If you say yes, you're always going to be correct. Because, well, if you accidentally say yes and do it, you're never going to make a mistake, right? So just always use Taxman and you're always going to be safe.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Go down again. So you find T.
T is given to us. T is equal to 4. Yeah. So we do need to use Taxman. So let's go ahead and say U is equal to, let's come back up here. It's pi over 6t. Pi over 6t. Taxman. There is no Taxman. U prime. The derivative of that inner is just pi. Wait, what? Why did I write a pi? Pi over 6t. And then the derivative of pi over 6t is just pi over 6. 1 divided by pi over 6 is 6 over pi. It's kind of like the reciprocal function. So I'm going to pay Taxman 6 over pi. If you don't believe me, keep it, change it, flip it, and you'll see the same answer. Let's go ahead and now pay Taxman. So after I do all this work, I'm going to pay Taxman. My new integral is between 0 and 4 of 6 over pi. And I'm going to rewrite everything, which is, I think it started with a sine, right? No, it's cosine. Cosine of pi over 6. T in there, 2, T, dt. Make sure I get all that right. Pi over 6t dt. Okay. We've paid Taxman, now we can take the antiderivative. When I take the antiderivative of cosine, anti-change means same. It's going to be the same sign if it was positive. It's going to stay positive, and it's going to be 6 over pi. Change it from cosine to sine of still pi over 6t. Evaluation bar, not plus c, because we actually have bounds from 0 to 4. Whew, we're still not done then. We have to plug in 4 and 0. All right, so let's come back up here. So I have 6 over pi. That's going to be multiplied by, I'm going to kind of factor that out and deal with it separately. When I plug in 4, I'll get sine of 2/3 t, and then sine of 2/3 t we know, right? We did it back here. Sine of 2/3 t is 3/2. or square root of 3 over 2, sorry. So square root of 3 over 2. Then minus whatever happens when we plug in 0. Sign of 0, everyone can shout out, is?
0.
0, yeah. So sign of 0, again, I'm thinking of right here, the y-coordinate of 0 is 0. So minus 0. And that's just 6 over pi times the square root of 3 over 2. So our answer in this case is equal to, and then 6 over 2 reduces to just 3. It's going to be 3 root 3 over pi. And what do we, so that is this integral, right? We still need to have our initial condition, so our final answer, took us a while to get there, is 3 square root of 3 over pi minus 2. Yeah, that was a rough problem. All right, there were 3 points to get for this one, add up to 9, right? Out of 3 points, you need 1 for finding the antiderivative. So if you got to this step right here, you got a point, plus 1. You get 1 point if you wrote down -2 anywhere on your paper using the initial condition, and you get 1 point for getting this final answer right here of, yeah, that 3 square root of 3 over pi minus 2. All right, count up your points. If you did it with a calculator, which is most of us, unfortunately, because I forgot to say, then you don't get the points, unfortunately.
Or there are places where we could have.
If you think you,
Like part B,
Yeah, B, I gave myself 1 point for
and
it.
then setting up the table in part B.
oh yeah, so if you set up your table and you put the start condition, you get a point.
Right.
So you could definitely get 2 points. I'm curious, how many points did everyone get? 1, 2, 1. All right, so I will be clearer about that. And especially on the test, it will be very clear when you're taking the real AP test because they will take away your calculator. You don't get it anymore. It's a little bit more confusing now. So just pay attention to 7.5 and 7.6, whether or not you get a calculator.
Okay.
All right, and yeah, that question was out of 9 points. And that is the end of the day. We have 10 seconds left for class.